Today we have an agenda for you. We'll be going through a prayer. We're going to talk a bit about the situation that we find ourselves in the moment and what is the response that we have as a church. How can you respond as a parish? What personal responses you might be able to think about, things that you can do in your own home, or ways that you can connect with other groups to build more capacity for yourself and for your parish or whatever organisation you might be with. And then how do we keep in touch and to stay connected? I just want to share my perspective here on why this is important to me as a minister in the Anglican Church. When we look at Genesis chapters 1 and 2, we hear God's original call to humanity. And there's a couple of ways that we can read it because there are actually two creation stories across those two chapters. One is that we're called to stewardship and to care for all of creation and to till God's garden. That's actually from chapter 2. Chapter 1, we're created in the image of God the Creator, who demonstrates how we are to live creatively and hospitably in the act of loving the very cosmos into being, because we're created after God the Creator. So creation is part of our role as well. Everything we do has an impact on the planet. Things like food, housing, transport, the appliances we use, what we do with our clothing and how we buy and dispose of clothing, consumer goods, recycling, banking, our super, so many things. And as much as possible, we need to try to minimise our impact on the world that we've been given to care for.
This is a prayer from the Right Reverend Dr. Winston Halapua, Archbishop Emeritus at Aotearoa, New Zealand and Polynesia. It's called a Moana prayer for the Pacific Ocean.
Loving and embracing God. You are God of the universe and all creation. You create and give life and see that your creation is good. We praise you for your gift of the moana, which covers most of the surface of your planet Earth. We thank you for the oceans of the world. We thank you for the flowing of the oceans into one another and around the continents and islands. We thank you for the life-giving of the oceans, for the oxygen, food, and resources they continually provide. We thank you that the ocean is home for most species, small and great. We are people of the moana. Our ancestors navigated by the stars and crossed the waves to find new homes. The voice of waves breaking on the reef speaks of your constancy and your love and your care for creation. May we hear the cries of sea creatures endangered by the selfish greed of humanity. May there be deep listening to the voice of waters rising to engulf land. May ears be open to the groaning caused by refusal to honor creation. May ears be open to suffering caused by a love of power which destroys. We beat a loud drum alerting people around the world to the danger of climate change, which threatens nature and human life. We blow a conch, calling for the worship of a life-giving God of immense goodness. Our forebears set out across the ocean. We set out on a venture to protect our home, the planet Earth. Help us to challenge short-sighted greed. Help us to address unjust structures and practices and to change our relationship with creation to one of care. We affirm our guardianship of the precious gift of creation. We have a vision. We have courage. We have your guidance. We have the presence of the risen one, whose power to love is greater than all the power of destruction. Grant that together we may bring peace to our planet Earth, to its many creatures and its many people. We laud you in the name of our God, Creator, Redeemer, and life-giving Spirit. Amen.
One of the ways that we can look at how we're going on caring for creation is using the tool that science has given us of overshoot days. And this is a map of the 26th overshoot day. An overshoot day is the day of the year in which, in this case, a country has used up all the we would have used up all the resources of the world that it could produce in 1 year by that date. And here we have a globe, a circle, and you'll see that Australia is right up here on one of the 10th worst. And if the whole world was consuming the way we are in Australia, then by the 16th of March, or the 19th of March, we would in fact, no, this year's the 16th, last year was the 19th, and the year before that it was the 7th of April. So we're getting worse, we're going backwards. The world would have used up all the resources if they used them at the same rate as we do in Australia. That includes things that we export to make our standard of living better by gaining money, and what we consume within the country. So it's pretty daunting that we're the 10th worst country. So maybe we should do something about it. You can see that back in 1971, Earth overshoot date for the globe was very close to the end of December. So we'd actually living in harmony with God's creation. But all that red at the top is how it's deteriorated. In 2020, 2019, we actually gained a little bit because of COVID, because industries were shut down, global travel wasn't so much. And so we actually improved quite a bit. But by the next year, we were back down to where we were before that. So we know that it's a human influence, and we know that we need to do something about it. The fossil fuel industry has known about this since the 1970s. Back in the 1970s, Exxon Global and their scientists predicted that burning fossil fuels would heat up the planet. And this map indicates, or this scale indicates, by the grey dotted lines, the various projections from the date they were processed and how it would have gone. And the red line is exactly how we are travelling, what science is measuring today. So the fossil fuel industry, with all of those projections, have plotted pretty much exactly where we are today. But did they do something about it or take it into account? No. They followed the tobacco industry and the asbestos industry and tried to hide it, pretend it wasn't true, hoping it would go away. But they've known and therefore I feel they're very responsible for where we are. Maybe they should be paying our insurance policies because of the results of it.
So for us as Anglicans, this isn't actually a new conversation. It's already been embedded in how we understand mission. And one of the marks of mission, number 5 there for the Anglican Communion, calls us to safeguard the integrity of creation and sustain and renew the life of the earth. That's not an optional extra, and that's part of what it means to follow Christ. So this isn't new for us. It's already part of how we already understand mission in the church. Over the past couple of decades, our diocese hasn't just talked about this, it's also been building a response from the protection of the environment canon from the Anglican Church of Australia through to the work of Angligreen, the Justice Unit, and now the Sustainability Roadmap that's come all from those things. There's actually a strong foundation already in place. So the roadmap isn't starting from scratch, it's helping us to move together with more clarity and more urgency. The Sustainability Roadmap was launched by our diocese in 2023, and it really focuses our response in 3 simple ways. It's how we operate as a church, that's the innovate part. How we live as individuals and communities, that's the encourage part. And how we use our voice in the wider world, and that being the advocate or advocacy space. But before we jump straight into those and looking at those a bit more detailed, it's worth just grounding what sits underneath them. We believe creation isn't just a resource, it's a relationship. We don't stand over it, we live within it. And it's so much that we should reflect on our First Nations people of our country, of how they've modelled that for so many thousands of years as well. And that changes, that philosophy changes how we actually act. So given the reality of the situation, the question for us becomes, how do we respond? Not just as individuals, of course, that's an important part, but as a church and together. And that's what this roadmap is trying to hold, a shared vision for how we live well within creation and respond to it. At the heart of this is a really simple conviction that creation is not just something we use, it's something we're in relationship with. We believe God is revealed in creation and that we are a part of it, not separate from it, not above it, but a part of it. So the question becomes, how do we live within that and do that well? How do we live in a way that reflects care, restraint, and responsibility rather than just consumption? And really, that's what this roadmap is also trying to do, to help us to do that movement together towards a way of life that allows creation to flourish, not just to survive. The first area it explores is to innovate. And this is really about how we operate as a church. It's asking, how do our buildings, our energy use, and the way we run things actually reflect what we believe about creation? So that might look like things like installing solar, reducing our energy, or gradually transitioning equipment and vehicles away from fossil fuel. It's not about being perfect with this as well overnight. It's probably helpful to remind ourselves. It's about though making those deliberate, practical changes over time where we can. The second area is to encourage. And this is about how we live, both as individuals and as communities. Because the reality is what we do in our homes and daily lives matters just as much as what happens in our church buildings. And that might be things like reducing waste, reusing or recycling more intentionally, or even just becoming more aware of where things come from and the impact that they have. But it's also about reconnecting with creation, with the seasons, with the rhythms of life that we've often disconnected from, and helping one another to do that, not as individuals trying harder on our own, but collectively as a community learning together. I wanted just to, at this point, just pause for a moment and draw these 2 areas, the innovate and the encourage, together in something quite practical. One of the ways that this is starting to take shape across our diocese is through a new network called Grow Together. And some of you already be familiar with the work of Baruna Farm and the ministry that we've been celebrating over the last 7 years there at St Francis College. And the way that that ministry has become to imagine church land as something living and productive. Grow Together is really about taking that kind of vision and connecting it more broadly across the diocese. At its heart, Grow Together is about reimagining church land, not just as something we maintain, but as something that can give life. Across the network, each garden or farm is grounded in 4 core values. That is, using church land intentionally, feeding those who are in need or feeding the hungry, as we call to by Matthew chapter 25, building the communities of welcome and inclusion, and responding in a very practical way to the effects of climate change. So in practice, it might look like community gardens, spaces where food is grown, but just as importantly, spaces where people belong, places where people who might never walk into a church building, for instance, still find themselves welcomed onto church land. So yes, it's environmental, but it's also about feeding people. It's also about community, and yet it's at the same time it's deeply missional. So if your parish or community has land, even a small amount, this is something you could begin to explore. And if something is already happening where you're at, Grow Together is about connecting those stories as well and sharing resources and not doing it alone. You don't, again, need to have it all figured out. This is something we're building together.
I'm reminded of this quote, and people probably know it, by Bishop Desmond Tutu. He once said that there comes a point where we need to stop just pulling people out of the river. We need to go upstream and find out why they're falling in. So different contexts, but I love this quote because it doesn't matter how many solar panels we put up, how many community gardens we do, as wonderful as they are, how many people we can feed. But if we don't address the causes of climate change, then we're not really fixing the problem. It's a challenge for us to do those things that we can right in front of us, but then also think about the bigger picture stuff. Why has the climate changed so much so quickly? If we don't do something about that, then other things we do aren't really going to fix it. With Advocate, then, it's about standing with the people, such as the Pacific Islanders and Torres Strait Islanders, who are at the front lines of climate change. And it's not just helping them to mitigate the effects, but actually advocate for the policies that will actually reduce fossil fuel climate pollution. And to me, this means calling on government and corporations to account where they continue to pollute the earth with fossil fuel pollution, and also export stuff to be burned overseas because it's still the same earth that's going to get polluted. Second one is about working for equitable access to renewables and a just transition for individuals and communities who need the work, projects and industries that will help their communities. How do we help those guys to see the benefits of renewables so that we're not just helping the earth, we're helping people as well, because we're all one and we're all interconnected. And last one is about participating obviously in the elections, but then also making those relationships with our leaders in between elections. That's actually where we can have a lot of impact as well. As we start to think about our responses, I want to just touch briefly on some numbers. The roadmap was launched in 2023. So in 2024, we've got some numbers back. So if you're at Synod last year, you would have seen some of these numbers. And to me, they give me a little bit of hope. You can see there that 59% of parishes actually have had solar panels installed. 19% have switched to an EV or a hybrid for their parish vehicle, which is not bad. Probably more now after the fuel crisis, perhaps. Really awesome to see. 66% of parishes have actually got planned measures that are put in place, and 72% of those are actually new measures that they're doing as well. The reason why we share these things is so that we inspire one another. It's because when we hear other people doing good stuff, we want to do the same as well. So I encourage people who have done stuff to tell those stories.
So here's a brief summary of steps our parishes and faith communities can take. We can sign on to the roadmap, consider pursuing 5-leaf Eco Awards, conduct a sustainability audit, and incorporate climate care into our services. Our Anglican Church Southern Queensland Sustainability Roadmap and Anglo-Green websites offer a wealth of resources provided by church leaders. Additionally, relevant information is consistently disseminated through Anglo-Green newsletters. Anglo-Green is committed to supporting parishes in their sustainability efforts by offering resources and guidance to sign up to the Sustainability Roadmap, develop a comprehensive parish sustainability action plan, utilise annual return data on carbon and water to inform planning, and evaluate the feasibility of installing solar panels and battery systems. Every year, Anglo-Green sets up an information stall at Synod where we enjoy talking with visitors, sharing insights and offering useful information. The parish of Aspley Albany Creek is in Bridgeman Downs, a North Brisbane suburb. Our parish signed up to the Sustainability Roadmap in 2023. Each year, we create a new action plan guided by this resource and tailor the audit template to fit our requirements. The next slides show highlights of our parish's commitment. In our first year, we launched the Aspley Albany Creek rooftop solar project by installing a fully grant-funded 8 kilowatt 20 panel system in April 2024. This system now supplies about 1/3 of the parish's energy, reducing costs and our carbon footprint. The project has increased awareness of solar benefits and energy-saving practices, while a fundraising parish dinner further strengthened community spirit. During our inaugural year, we implemented our adaptation of the Anglican Communion Forest Project with an emphasis on tree planting and reforestation initiatives. Bishops gave native trees to confirmation candidates and encouraged them to plant them in their gardens or parish grounds. Furthermore, in 2023 and 2024, our parish was the recipient of a total of 100 native plants provided by Brisbane City Council. These specimens have been planted as part of our efforts to replace invasive species such as Chinese elm, ochna, and asparagus fern. Last year, the 5-leaf Eco Awards was aspirational, but this year our parish is working toward it and has added its criteria to our sustainability action plan. Our parish values both contemplation and action, reflecting Jesus' pattern of alternating ministry with prayer. Throughout the season of creation, our parish distributed the Season of Creation app and furnished printed materials for individuals without access to digital resources. Various Bible study groups and individuals participated in daily devotions, readings, reflections, and prayers from different Christian viewpoints. A labyrinth on our parish grounds hosted 2 guided walks at the start and the end of Season of Creation. Promoting personal responsibility proved most effective when framed as an educational opportunity. In July, participants gained valuable insights into the methods for minimizing or eliminating the use of single-use plastics. Notably, a significant number of parishioners chose to participate in Plastic-Free July. Our parish joined the Containers for Change program in 2019 to keep eligible containers out of landfill and waterways. Now, part of our sustainability plan, we have saved over 10,000 containers. Due to the enthusiastic participation in Plastic-Free July, we decided to raise awareness and get involved by recycling items that are typically hard to recycle, like worn-out socks at the end of their use. These socks were sent to Apparel to be shredded and turned into Uptex material. Impressively, one parishioner donated 73 pairs. His wife especially appreciated the extra room in his sock drawer. To continue our parish enthusiasm for recycling and decluttering their homes, we focused on fabric recycling to be used to make rescue bags for rescued wildlife. Once again, the response was tremendous, and parishioners appreciated the chance to find new homes for items they instinctively felt shouldn't be thrown away, even though those things were occupying space in their houses. Many of our parishioners were unaware that blister packs were able to be recycled at participating chemists. St Clements, a nearby parish, holds monthly bushwalking groups open to our parish for walks, reflection, and enjoying nature together. Our parish remains committed to protecting creation. The blue Stand Up for Nature sign is prominently placed outside our parish building on Ridley Road. In conclusion, engaging in all our activities enhances our shared sense of belonging and connection to a larger purpose.
I'm quite overwhelmed by all the stuff you guys are doing, Delisa. Very cool. And there's still more. There's still stuff that we can look at. Because every parish is different, every place is unique. And as Jolita's mentioned before, the 5 Leaf Eco Awards is a good way to, I guess, get people to recognize both within your own parish, but also in the wider community and other parishes to see your efforts. It just gives you a framework to work towards kind of incremental way to address those changes. Again, linking with Anglo Green's a really good place to start because, as you can see, there's people here with expertise and experiences who can guide you. Particularly if you can name a contact person from your parish for them, that'd be great because then they know exactly who to speak to. And that, as we know, it's not always a clergy because they're already busy. So let's get some leaders up. And as we've heard from Samuel, a Grow Together network is now fully functional and really, really keen to hear from people. So again, if you have land in your parish and you might already have a community garden, but don't quite know how to engage the community, for example, or you might need some expertise on how to make it grow a lot of food to actually feed people, perhaps, Samuel's your guy. Consider actions proposed by Anglo Green and myself and the SRC, Justice Unit for Advocacy. It's good to look outside where you're at into the bigger picture as well. But at the end of the day, the dollar also speaks. So think about how you can start to save money when you start to save on your energy bills. And that applies with EVs as well. The running costs for EVs are so low. And we'll hear more about that from Rob as well. One thing that you may have already heard Peter Moore's spoken at various places is Conference of the Parties around climate change, which is an international meeting. COP30 last year was a bit of a disappointment, unfortunately. And so this year, which is COP31, originally was going to be co-hosted by Australia and the Pacific. It's now going to be held in Turkey, but locally there are ways for us to get involved. The PM and the Minister for Climate Change, for example, are the 2 main people that we want to speak to. And a lot of people were surprised to learn that people of faith actually have a powerful voice in this space. Oftentimes, some people would like to think that, these people at church, they don't really care about anything. They just do their own thing. So when we do speak, people go, oh, you actually care, and it's really powerful. And these are the kinds of things that we are going to be engaging about. So stop approving new coal and gas projects, end public subsidies, respect First Nations people's rights, protect country, contributions to the United Nations Green Climate Funds, just transition around extractive industry workers who prosper through jobs in renewable industries. And then a really big thing at the moment is civil society and faith groups coming together to create and endorse a fossil fuel treaty. At the moment, actually, there is a first international conference on the just transition away from fossil fuels happening right now, this week, in Colombia. I want to just touch on a few other things that you can get involved in. The campaign Yes to Yesi, as you can see, is about the Torres Strait Islands. Often these guys are ignored by our government. I keep forgetting they're basically Queenslanders. They're right here. They're our people. They're our friends. So it's wonderful that Bishop Jeremy visited the low-lying islands in the Torres Strait in 2024. And as a result of the trip, he's co-written an invitation with traditional owner Yessi Mosby, as you can see in his traditional gear with his son up there, to invite the Prime Minister to Masig, to his low-lying island in the Torres Strait, to see for himself the devastating impact of climate change. You can see Yessi pointing out to the Archbishop there where his great-great-great-grandmother's grave was. It's really devastatingly been washed away by the rising sea. So parishes can sign in support or write their own letter to the PM as well. So if you just go to Anglican Focus, our online magazine, and search for Yessi, Yessie, you'll see all these links come up. But one of them is the letter that was written to the PM, and you can sign to support or do what the Churchy students have done. Pretty amazing project. So they wrote their own letter to the PM and also draw beautiful pictures as well, illustrating the effects of what's happening. And they actually had a chance to visit Canberra, and they actually met Milton Dick, who's an old boy from Churchy. So they hand delivered these letters to him, and he's apparently promised to pass it on to the PM, which is wonderful. And I think it just goes to show that every voice matters, and these children contributing to the fight for the Torres Strait is just amazing. The work of Angela Green and our Justice Unit in meeting with decision makers in government, writing and calling, demonstrating the need and the desire for people of faith to see this transition is really, really important. These are visual ways of doing that in front of our churches at St. John's Cathedral, and I think that's Nunda, that one up the top. Parishes in Logan and Milton and other places have done the same. People notice, and people can see that we care about God's world. A way to get involved in that is, again, joining with ARC and QSEN, and also, secular groups as well. Queensland Conservation Council have a lot of good resources, and they're really, really happy to work with us. And there's always public meetings and prayer vigils and services to get involved in. You can organise your own one. We have lots of resources to support you with that as well.
In this section, we'll look at the steps we can take as individuals. While we do have power as individuals, we mustn't get caught in the trap that it's all down to us. By that I mean, just like in the tobacco industry, they blamed smokers for their choices. We needed governments to regulate tobacco, and we also need governments to regulate fossil fuels. So with that small caveat, we'll look at some of the things we can do. But amazingly, with transport now, we actually have electric vehicles. So 10 years ago, it wasn't really an option, but today it is an option. So I'd recommend that you check it out, because we calculated the other day that if you just pay 5 cents for some off-peak electricity overnight, that can take you 100 kilometers for just 80 cents. So amazingly cheap, at about 12 cents a litre if it was petrol equivalent cost. Electric vehicles, much better now than they were even just a couple of years ago. Looking at food now, it amazes me that we have oranges in our supermarkets from California. It's a bit crazy, really, shipping basically water around the world when we grow plenty of oranges in Australia. A very small decision, but we can eat local, we can eat things that are seasonal, and that actually saves a lot of environmental costs. Other people challenge us to eat less meat because it's better for us as well as having less carbon emissions. I think that's worth considering. Now, when it comes to energy, we can now generate our own electricity, for example. People have solar on their roof, they can have a battery to store it in for nighttime. And if you happen to be a renter and that isn't an option for you to put solar on where you live, or if you live in an apartment, you can buy something called 100% green power, which forces your electricity retailer to buy renewable energy to supply to you. Housing is actually a very large part of our carbon footprint, whether we can see it or not, because every building material needs energy to create it, to install it, to maintain it, replace it when it wears out. And our houses are actually now probably twice as big as they were just a couple of generations ago. So maybe when the kids move out, thinking about ourselves here, it's time to downsize at some point to something more appropriate to our needs, and then hand the house on in this housing crisis to a family that can need a larger house. Appliances. So when your appliances come to the end of their life, it's worth considering what their energy efficiency is like, what their water efficiency is like. And there's some good tools out there. For example, Choice Magazine is online now, and you can research different household appliances for how energy and water efficient they are. And that can save you a lot of money over the life of those appliances. Clothing. Do you replace your clothing every 6 months? Fashion aficionado? Well, I can tell you for a fact that St. Vinny's and Lifeline are overwhelmed with the amount of clothing that is donated to them. And there's possibly no way to actually ever find all that clothing a new home. So my suggestion would be to buy quality clothes and have them last for a very long time, rather than really end up in landfill if St. Vinny's and Lifeline can't find new homes for them. And just finally, consumer goods, all the other things, furniture, all the other things we buy. A suggestion is to buy quality goods, and then they'll last for a long time. Think mobile phones, think laptops, think furniture. If we buy quality goods, they will last a long time and not end up in landfill. So one way to think about that, about our footprint, is to reduce waste, is the 7 Rs. These are kind of everyday common sense words: refuse, reduce, reuse, refurbish, repair, repurpose, recycle. And so I'll just highlight one or two of these R's. So one is refuse. So you might get something in single-use plastic. People can buy vegetables shrink wrapped in a bit of polystyrene. Well, vegetables probably have pretty good packaging already. Bananas come in banana skins and so on, and we can wash our vegetables. So we don't need a lot of packaging. We can refuse it and reduce it wherever we can. And I would say and suggest that as Christians, perhaps there's another couple of R's in the R's to reduce our footprint, and that is reverence for our creation that we've been entrusted with to enjoy and also to restore. We can do our part to help restore the creation that we've been gifted by caring for the environment, caring for creation. Now, an often overlooked area is finances. Question to think about for later: does your bank invest in fossil fuels? What about your superannuation? Where's that invested? And is it invested in areas that you wouldn't be too happy about? So in the case of our banks, I think ANZ lends the most money to fossil fuel projects in Australia. And most of us wouldn't know these things. And certainly the big four all do their fair share of lending to big fossil fuel projects. So if you have a chance to, consider smaller banks that are probably more community minded. They might even be owned by their members and not have that profit motive in the same way. And they probably aren't lending money to the big coal and gas projects out there. Superannuation is another one. Our investments, for Australians, super is probably our biggest investment. By choosing a certain super fund, there's a few very climate-focused ones out there, for example, Future Super and Australian Ethical. But most big super funds have an option called an ethical option or an environmental option, and it's worth checking those out. I've put a link up there for an organization called Market Forces, and they do a lot of research in these financial areas, and you can actually send your bank an email through their website to say, hey, please stop investing in coal and gas projects. And they also have some information about superannuation funds as well. So I'll tell you very quickly a journey of our own home to make it more sustainable. About 14 years ago, we installed solar panels. It was 2008. But as recently as 2007, only 342 homes in Queensland had solar panels on their roof connected to the grid. And so less than 20 years on, not 342, not 342,000, but close to 900,000 homes and businesses now have solar on them. So 20 years, amazing growth and amazing improvement in our electricity and making it greener and more sustainable. We then got an EV in 2012. And back then, EVs didn't go very far. It was really a great town car. Got us around very, very cheaply, as I mentioned before, for a few cents a kilometre, if that. And off your solar, it's even cheaper. It might even be free. But nowadays, you can get much greater range EVs. Certainly, we do many long distance road trips driving to Sydney and sometimes even Melbourne. It's quite feasible now. The next thing we did was when our gas cooktop died, we replaced it with an electric induction cooktop. And that made us think, we're paying $1.30 a day to have the gas to our house. And the only thing that's using gas now is our gas hot water. So as that got close to the end of its life, we replaced it with an electric hot water heat pump, which is a very efficient electric hot water system. And then we got rid of gas completely. We also replaced a really old aircon unit with a newer, much more energy efficient one. It took us 14 years, and hopefully it won't take you that long. You don't have to do it all at once. But when your appliances and when your car comes up to the end of its life, please consider electric options and more sustainable options. We don't have a battery, but I'll hand over to Father Peter now, who does, and he's going to tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, my wife and I installed a battery last year. That's us having a look at it. We actually installed solar panels. We put 1 kilowatt on back in 2008. Then when I retired in 2014, we upped the kilowatts, another 4 kilowatts to make it up to the 5 kilowatts that you're allowed at that time. And then just late last year, installed the battery with the 30% subsidy from the government. In September of 23, we were paying $82.66 a quarter. After we installed our battery, which was on the 29th of October last year, we haven't in fact paid any bills with all the government subsidies because we're pensioners. And so until I installed a meter after the battery came in, we changed the meter, and that made us have to pay the power bill. Now the government subsidies have stopped, and we found out that our solar panels aren't all that efficient because they're over 10, nearly 16 years old, the first ones. And so recently we signed a contract, and on the 5th of May, we're putting in a brand new array of solar panels. And then we should not have to pay any electricity, even though our daughter upgraded in December an EV that she had for a new one. So we've taken it over and we charge that, plugging into a 10 amp power point at the moment, but we've installed a 15 amp, so it'll charge a little bit faster. And so we expect our power bill to go back into credit permanently as soon as that new solar panels settle down, even though we're charging one of these low range EVs. So that's our story. Thank you very much.
So just a bit of a summary of when we're buying things, furniture or other appliances, we need to have a think about the materials that are in it, how much energy might have been used to make it. If they use energy, what's its energy efficiency? And as I mentioned, Choice magazine can give you star ratings, and they do reviews on different products and the quality of the products and their recommendations. Water efficiency, great for washing machines and so on. And shower heads are actually surprisingly a big user of hot water and energy, because if you have a really high flow shower head, you will use your hot water really quickly and it will cost you a lot. There's some really good low flow shower heads that really give you a nice water feeling as well. And then I mentioned with food, how far has that product had to travel? Are you getting oranges from California, or are you getting them from the Murray River? Another big budget item for most of us is our energy supplier. A lot of variation between energy suppliers. Often the bigger ones are happy to hang on to coal and gas. Some of the smaller, innovative ones are more supportive of us getting solar panels on our house, or building their own large solar farms and wind farms. So it's worth checking out, doing a bit of due diligence on your electricity supplier and see, are they supporting this transition to a more sustainable world, or are they holding it back? So there are lots of resources out there if you'd like to explore these areas further. This is a chart used by ARC, the Australian Religious Response to Climate Change, and they took it from one of those superannuation funds I mentioned. And this particular super fund estimates that your super fund is one of the biggest contributors to your carbon footprint. Now, of course, it depends exactly on your lifestyle and how big your super balance is and all that sort of thing. But they're suggesting it's as important or bigger than your car choices or composting, or whether you're vegetarian or vegan, or even your green energy electricity use. If you're interested in learning more about that, check out the ARC website, and that'll be in the links provided. They will look at a lot of the aspects that we've been talking about tonight and have more resources, and you can find out what action you can take. I think the first step is to become informed. It's probably reasonably easy for you to add up how much electricity you use, or gas and petrol, and that's kind of your starting point of what your footprint might look like for the fuels you use. And then, of course, there's other things like flights and food and other things, but there's lots of tools out there to help you do that. They'll also potentially save you money if you start to reduce these fossil fuel type things in your life. And why are we doing all of this? Well, as people have mentioned earlier, the costs of climate change will increase with more storms and droughts and so on, bushfires. And we're trying to leave our planet in a better state, as best state as we can do for our children and for future generations. The longer we delay in not making these changes, the cost will be greater. So actually making the costs to do these changes now, it'll save us money in the long run.
So there are a lot of different groups that you can get involved in, because it is helpful, I think, to get involved with other people and to share ideas and just support one another. And sometimes it's much easier to do something with other people than it is to do things on your own. So Doing Justice, where Peter Brandyporn comes from, Doing Justice, or Anglia Green at the diocesan level, you get lots of information from them. Religious Response to Climate Change, RCC or ARC, that's a national group. And then there's Green Faith, which is international. The 5 Leaf Eco Awards that you can apply for through the parish. And there are lots of conservation councils. I think we talked about the Queensland Conservation Council. There's also an Australian conservation group as well. So those are some good ones that you can get involved in. And that might lead you down the path of some actions like contacting your local member and things like that. The other thing, though, I was thinking about was, what can you do at a local level? Because there's a lot of local groups that I'm not going to know about that are active in your local communities, like a land care group, or here locally in Toowoomba, we have an environmental council, which is for the Darling Downs, and they're very active. Community gardens or permaculture groups are great to join. There's a localization movement, and that's at a global level, but it goes right down to local level, because that's the whole point, making sure that food and industry is happening within a local level. The best way to access that is through your local farmers markets, which are good fun to go to. This is a brilliant little app for devotions. During the season of creation, you might want to use this app, but you know what? You can get it anytime. It's just a great little devotional that you can use. It doesn't matter what time of the year. So that's been put together by the Queensland Churches Environmental Network, part of the Queensland Churches Together. Father Peter is one of the representatives on that. It was great to be part of that project, and it was a real team effort. If you want something that just helps you to focus in on a day-to-day basis on how the scripture informs the way we care for our environment, I think that's an excellent way to do it. We'd love you to keep in touch with us. You can sign up for the Anglia Green newsletter, which helps you keep up to date with what we're up to in Anglia Green across. Sign up for resources. So there'll be some links in there that you can find out more from.
We can take personal actions to reduce our own footprint. We can influence others when we consider areas where we're involved in the wider community, organisations, workplace, memberships of society or whatever. We can be a voice there and try and do it in a way that doesn't turn people off, but encourages them, educates them without being obnoxious. We can advocate by getting to know our members of parliament and councillors and people in positions of power. So thank you all for coming, and there's the sponsors, main resources we've used from Anglia Green, Growing Together, Justice Unit and ARC, the Australian Religious Response to Climate Change.